Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. I'm delighted to say that I've got a very, very special guest alongside me today. He's got the coolest name in the world. Romario Webster of talkSPORT is with me. Romario, welcome to the show, mate. How you doing?
Yes, Harry, thank you for having me, brother. I always give credit to my mum for the name. I'll try and take the credit, but the credit goes to Mumsy. But yeah, thank you for having me, bro.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, mate. It's an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to getting into the ins and outs of all the latest Arsenal news with you. I just want to apologise to all our listeners and viewers first up because I'm not at home, as you can see. I'm at my parents' house, which means I don't have the usual camera, microphone, and all that. So if the sound quality is not quite as good, if the images are not quite as good, I do apologise, but you'll have to bear with me. Something's come up, and I've had to make my way down here. Look, Romario, we got loads and loads to chat about, mate. We're going to talk Sesko, Gyökeres. Everybody's kind of sitting there wondering what's going on. Which one are Arsenal going to move for, if any? There's been some Madueke chat. There's been an update on Kepa. We've talked to Thomas Partey throughout the summer. Alexander Zinchenko could be on his way as well, with another London club having said to have entered the mix for him. Before we get into the subject specifically, what's your kind of general feeling around the transfer window right now? Because there's a lot of Arsenal fans out there, and I've felt this at times, that are feeling a little bit stressed out by what's perceived to be a lack of movement at the moment.
Well, you said it there, Harry. I've been obviously watching the pod across the last few weeks, and I've been sensing your tone has gradually gotten a bit more frustrated. And to be honest, brother, I'm in the same position. I look at it, and I'm not going to say I'm worried because it's still in June. We haven't gotten to July yet. And most of the clubs that were doing their business were in the Club World Cup. So I'm not at panic station mode just yet. However, when you hear names like Noni Madueke get mentioned and you see the likes of Thomas Partey still not having signed a new contract, you begin to worry that are Arsenal going into their old ways of taking too long to get things sorted? If you don't want Thomas Partey to stay, cut your losses and move on to the next target. And yeah, I am a little bit worried about it. However, I'm not panicking. I think it's still early. I think Andrea Berta and Mikel Arteta know what they're doing. So I'm willing to give it a bit more time before I start panicking.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm not at panic stations yet, but I've got to be honest, as you said, you probably sensed it in my tone. I've had days where I've woken up and the first thing I do, I don't know about like what your morning routine is like, but the first thing I do before I get out of bed is I look at the football news. That's the first thing I do, right? I grab my phone from the side of the bed. I have a quick scroll through. Has anything major happened? Has anything major broken? I go on the BBC Sport website. I go on a couple of others, and then I get up and I'm ready to start my day. And there's been a couple of days where I've woken up and just gone, still nothing, like still no progress. And it doesn't mean that progress isn't being made, because a lot of stuff is clearly happening in the background. And we'll come on to talk about some of the reporting around, in particular, the striker situation in a bit, because some of it is so conflicting. You just don't know what to believe and who to listen to. But I'll be honest, there have been days recently where I've kind of gotten up and gone, come on, guys, like get on with it. How much of an impact do you think the whole 1st of July PSR thing is having here? Do you think that's a factor?
Well, I think it's probably more of a factor than we're allowing. As you said, you're waking up every morning checking BBC Sport. That's what we all do. We all check Arsenal transfers. We're all looking for that Fabrizio or David Ornstein tweet. I saw this morning Ornstein tweeted about Jamie Bino Gittins going to Chelsea. It looks like everyone's on the same page there. So you are frustrated that Arsenal aren't doing the same. In terms of that July 1st PSR date, I do think it's having more of an impact than people believe. I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure Spanish clubs, French, Italian clubs, their transfer window starts a little later, or their financial year is a little different to the Premier League. And that 1st of July, 30th of June is quite key to them. I know that seems to be the hold-up with Zubimendi. It's pretty much agreed, but they don't want to confirm it until that date. So I do believe it. I do think the club are doing favours for other clubs and saying, look, we'll delay it until that date. We don't need to push it. So it's one of them, Harry. I don't know what you think, like in terms of the striker situation, but it seems like Victor Gyökeres' agents are putting loads of things in the media and saying, look, come and get me, basically. Do you think that the club is showing good poise by not just throwing their hat in the ring straight away and waiting for an option to see which option's best for them? Do you think that's the right thing to do?
I'll be honest with you, mate. I'm struggling with the Gyökeres reports. Like I do like the player, and I do think he is a good option, and I think he's as good an option as Benjamin Sesko. I think Sesko's one very much for the future, and Gyökeres is probably one that maybe doesn't have that longevity to what he could bring to the club, but could, you know, basically they're both decent strikers, right? And whichever one we end up with, I'll be okay with if it is indeed one of those players. But I guess here's my thing. For such a long time, I've been convinced that Sesko's the one. For such a long time, I've been adamant and sure that he's the one that we're going to go for.
Why is that though, Harry? Why? Is that from your belief that you think he's the right one, or you think the club think he's the right one?
I think that the club have been watching him for such a long time, and there's been so much noise around this for such a long time that it would make zero sense now to having tracked this player for a year to get to the summer where you could finally get him and then just go, actually, we prefer somebody else. Now, while we're talking about this, there's been a bit of breaking news, which we've got to share. So let me just bring up X on the laptop.
Don't get me excited, Harry. Don't get me excited.
With you. We're reacting to this live. I haven't actually read the post properly, but I've seen it out of the corner of my eye. So let's bring this up. Let's share the screen. Hold on a second. Where are we? Here we go. So Fabrizio Romano has just posted about Victor Gyökeres. He says, Victor Gyökeres has already personally informed Sporting President Varandas about his decision to leave. He has no intention to play for the club anymore. Gyökeres wants a new chapter. He feels heartbroken after exit pact and not expected to return to training. So, on that point about Gyökeres, Sesko, we're talking about who's the better fit. I said that I found it difficult to get my head around how strong some of the Gyökeres reports are, given that for me, it felt like Sesko was the one and the priority and all the rest of it. If you're Victor Gyökeres, though, Romario, and we're speculating here, but if you're Victor Gyökeres, do you go this far? Do you tell Sporting that you're not going to play for them anymore? You're not going to train if you don't know that there is a club there waiting, ready to press the go button on a deal? Surely you don't.
Harry, don't get me excited, bro, because I can't actually explain how much I want Victor Gyökeres at Arsenal. And I think you're right. I touched on it, obviously, a minute ago, that his agents are using people like Fabrizio to push this narrative that he doesn't want to be at Sporting Lisbon anymore. And I think a tweet like that to break whilst we're talking just shows how desperate he is. And I think you're right. I don't think you go this far unless you have a real good feeling that a club is there and willing to pay what you thought you'd agreed would let you leave the club. So I think Victor Gyökeres is of the belief that Arsenal will pay the fee that he'd agreed with Sporting, and now it seems Sporting are changing. But an interesting thing that Gyökeres said after Sporting won the Portuguese Cup, he said, "We'll see if the reports are true." And I don't know what you make this, Harry, but ever since he said that, and even seeing stuff like this with Fabrizio's just tweeted, it's got me thinking, is Gyökeres desperate to join us? It's starting to seem like he's almost pleading. And even he was in a bit of disbelief after the Portuguese Cup that he doesn't really know if Arsenal are genuinely interested, or how much do you think Arsenal want Gyökeres? Is he just a backup, or do you think we see him as like a priority option?
I think if he comes in, he plays, but I think obviously whoever comes in, we've got Kai Havertz there, and regardless of what so many of the fans think about Kai Havertz in terms of the negativity towards him, he's a real favourite in Mikel Arteta's eyes. And I don't believe whether you get Gyökeres or Sesko, Kai Havertz will be completely pushed aside. So whoever comes in, I think will be sort of not necessarily sharing that role with him, because I think they'll play probably more often than not. But, you know, there'll always be that Kai Havertz factor there as well. But the thing about him kind of seemingly pleading for a move, I think that's really interesting. And I think in a lot of ways, that's got a lot of Arsenal fans on board with him. I mean, Rowan in the chat says, I want the player who wants us the most. And John Daly's question is, what's both your thoughts of the attitude of these players? One seems to be begging for a move to us, and the other seems to be milking the hell out of us. I know which one's attitude I prefer. Now, just before we answer that question and get into that, to be clear, there's been some reporting from Duncan Castles and a couple of others over the last few days suggesting that Benjamin Sesko wants a release clause in his contract, which personally I think is a load of crap, and I would not entertain giving him a release clause in his contract. That's the first thing. And secondly, that the wages are crazy. This was also reported in the Mirror, in the Sun, but then Miguel Delaney came out yesterday and said actually Arsenal are around about 10 million euros shy of the price with RB Leipzig, suggesting that the problem is not between Arsenal and Sesko, but that the problem is between Arsenal and RB Leipzig. So if I'm being honest, I don't know what to believe, but at least based on the noises we're hearing, and that's all we can go by, it does seem like Gyökeres wants it more, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see what the viewers think, Harry. And like you said there, if that release clause story is true, it worries me. With Erling Haaland, when he joined Man City, I've seen a few Arsenal fans reference him having a release clause in his first contract. Erling Haaland was a different kettle of fish to Benjamin Sesko. This isn't the same level of player. I think people think Sesko can be on a similar level to Erling Haaland in the future, but the numbers Erling Haaland was putting up is of that Kylian Mbappe, Lamine Yamal kind of wonder kid, where it's like, how the hell is he scoring this many goals? So I think Haaland having a release clause is sort of justified, whereas Sesko, I think, coming to Arsenal from a club like Leipzig, that is a step up. And I think you have to then earn your way to the next step, which is probably Real Madrid or Barcelona, right? So for me, that's a bit off-putting for me. And I think, like the I forgot his name, so forgive me, but Gyökeres has this urge to join Arsenal, and I know you'll remember, Harry, but Mikel Arteta said we don't want to have to convince people to join Arsenal. You know why you want to join Arsenal. I'm a big advocate of us being a big club, and if you don't see that and you think we're not a big club, then I'm not really bothered. The way Calafiori really wanted to join the club, where he was actually attending games, I thought it just grows the fans and the players closer together, because you're almost sharing that bond of your love for the club. So for me, seeing that Fabrizio Romano post, Harry, and just seeing how Victor Gyökeres has been online in his interviews, there's just this, it's like he sees himself in an Arsenal shirt. So for me, I don't know what you think, but it's almost a no-brainer to go for Gyökeres at this point.
I think it looks like you'll be able to get Gyökeres cheaper, and obviously add to the fact that he now doesn't want to play and doesn't want to train for Sporting. That probably puts them in a worse position in terms of negotiating, because the player's essentially doing his bit to force it. And it doesn't feel like Benjamin Sesko's doing that. It feels like Sesko's quite happy to kind of sit back and allow RB Leipzig and Arsenal to go through the motions. And then on top of that, and again, it is purely based on the reports we're reading, want to get more and more and more out of Arsenal, which I don't think is fair. He doesn't have the back catalogue of work, does he, for you to look at him and go, well, this is a player that we have to move heaven and earth to sign. It's like, for example, people have been talking a lot about Rodrigo this summer, right? Rodrigo is a star and plays for Real Madrid. If you have to go the extra mile to convince him, fine. But with Sesko, I'm not sure he's there. He got 13 league goals last season, which isn't anything to go crazy about. Now, that's not to say he can't go on and be a very good player and he can't go on and help us, but it feels like there's two options. There's one that can help us now, and there's one that is more likely to be a big asset to us in the future. And I just think we're at that stage now where we got to win now, not tomorrow. It's about today. And
well, Harry, what did you make of Benjamin Sesko's agent's words, where he said we won't force Leipzig into selling Benjamin? They're very amicable with the club, and he said something like it'll take a special club. Do you think they're almost insinuating that they're doing us a favor by coming to Arsenal? That's the vibe I'm sort of getting.
Yeah, that's the impression you get, right? And it comes down to communication. It's bad communication. I don't think agents really, in a situation like the one that Sesko finds himself in, where he's at that point where he's maybe about to make that big move, I don't think the agent should be piping up about anything. I don't think they should be speaking publicly, genuinely. I think you should keep it behind closed doors. Obviously, that makes it frustrating for people like us because we don't know what's going on. We don't know the ins and outs. but don't give people fuel to create stories out of. And that's what Benjamin Sesko's agent did. I mean, again, the whole release clause thing was the bit that really annoyed me. And I went on a bit of a rant about it, and the clip went kind of viral. And there was a part of me that was going, I don't know if I should have said this because I didn't know for sure it was the case, and it's kind of taken off. But the more you read, the more you kind of think that Victor Gyökeres wants this move more. And if that's the case, and it is funny because yesterday, when I put that clip out, there was a few people that are obviously much more critical of Arsenal than me who were like, what are you talking about? Well, I basically said that Arsenal aren't a stepping stone club. And it was funny because so many of the people that would normally tell me that my standards have fallen and that my standards are in the bin, as they'd say, are now saying, no, actually, we're a stepping stone club. Hold on a minute. Have you chosen to accept that Arsenal are a stepping stone now? Because I'm not ready to do that at this stage. So, no. Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? It's an odd one. But look, let's see what happens with the striker situation. Interesting development this morning. Victor Gyökeres has told Sporting that he is going to leave, that he has no intention to play for the club anymore, that he wants a new chapter, and he feels heartbroken after exit pact. I think what Fabrizio Romano is trying to say there was not upheld. I think there was probably some kind of conversation or discussion. That's what his agent was claiming previously anyway. And we'll see what happens. Let's move on though. Let's talk about another player that Arsenal are being linked with, and I want to get your thoughts on this one. It's a Premier League based player. Let's get into it right after this. Okay, so Arsenal continue to be linked with Noni Madueke from Chelsea. Now, I've said it already. I don't need to go over my thoughts again, but I mean, why? I don't get it. What's your take on this one?
All right, now, Harry, man, I'm gonna be respectful because I've got respect for football players for what they do. I'm gonna be respectful, but we cannot sign Noni Madueke. We can't. I just don't think it would honestly be not even a sideways step. I'd say it's a backward step. I don't think he's better than Martinelli. He's obviously not better than Saka. I think he almost stunts Ethan Nwaneri's growth in his playing time. And I don't think he's as effective as Leandro Trossard. And I personally wouldn't be against selling Trossard this season. So, yeah, I just don't think it's an option. I don't see the benefit in it. I think part of transfers is the PR of it. And I think getting Kepa's a smart signing. I'm actually a big fan of that. I think a second choice keeper, £5 million, Premier League proven, makes sense. However, when you look at Noni Madueke, Chelsea fans aren't convinced by him. He's not exactly got a catalogue like Raheem Sterling where you can say, well, there was a player there, he's won Premier League titles, maybe we can get out of him. That was sort of us coping with the deal, but at least you have a track record to go off. Whereas with Noni Madueke, it's all potential. It's not really, manufactured itself into something where you can say, look, this is a top player. I'm totally against it. If we sign Noni Madueke, Harry, I lose a lot of faith in the club in what they're doing. I don't know what you think. I don't know if you're less harsh on him as me, but I just don't think he's that good. So if we're going to sign a player that I think isn't that good, then just tells me the club are happy with not challenging for the title.
I don't think he's a bad player, but I don't think he's a top level player. He's another one of those wingers that is too hit and miss for me. And we've got players like that already. Martinelli's hit and miss at times. 1 minute he's brilliant. The next minute he can't hit a barn door. And I find that really frustrating. And I feel like we need to sign players that are at a level where they can be consistent week in, week out. And Madueke's not that. Would he represent another option? Yes, but that's about it. And I could think of other wingers out there that I would rather take a bit of a gamble on if you're going to take a gamble, which is definitely what you'd be doing with a player like that. Look, also, as the story goes, Chelsea want 50 million quid for him, which to me is crazy. Yeah. It's not a deal that I would entertain. There was some further kind of colour added to the story where it was said that that Noni Madueke is someone that Arsenal are interested in, but not at £50 million, and that they would maybe revisit this later down the line if the demand slightly changed. But I mean, it's got to be a really low price deal for me to even entertain it. I'm talking 15 million. Anything more than
Yeah,
that, I'm not
yeah.
paying it. At that price, you go, okay, you take it on the chin, squad edition, might do all right. But again, it would be wasted funds for me because it's clear that, we need to upgrade in that attacking department. And there are so many others out there that I think would be a much better bet than Noni Madueke.
Well, Harry, I don't know what you make of this, but I know it's not as simple as this either. I know it's not like, well, that didn't happen, so this can. But you think we were willing to spend 20 to 25 million pounds on Juan Garcia, who's just gone to Barcelona. That obviously ends up not happening. We get Kepa for 5 million. It's probably not as simple. I don't know why it's not, but that technically would free up 15 to 20 million pounds you can use elsewhere. I think if you're going to sign another forward option who plays out wide or can maybe play through the middle, I think you go and try and get Morgan Rogers from Aston Villa. I think he's different to all the players we have at the club. If you look at Madueke, he's similar to Saka in terms of he likes playing on the right, cutting in on his left. And on the left-hand side, like you said, he's hit and miss like Martinelli. Whereas Morgan Rogers, we haven't got a player who plays like him. He can play off the left. You can get away with him playing through the middle, playing even down the middle as a 9. I think he'd be effective. So I don't know if you think that's realistic, Harry, getting a player like Morgan Rogers. I think you're probably looking at 80 million plus. But I think that's the sort of players you need to go for if you want to challenge. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think I like the player, and I think that there's a possibility that clubs can take advantage of maybe Aston Villa's PSR needs and really kind of tempt them with a big bid. But I think there's probably a number of players that they would shift before Morgan Rogers. So I think you'd really have to kind of break the bank to bring him in. I agree with you that he can play from the left, and I agree with you that he'd also be effective through the middle. I just think, in my head, and it's just my opinion, we need a more specialist winger. That's kind of where I see the gap in the team. Just another wide that's a bit more explosive, a bit more dynamic. And Morgan Rogers is all of those things. He's powerful. I can't remember seeing a kind of attacking midfield type player as powerful as him for a long, long time. So I really do rate him. I'm just not sure he would be a priority for me personally. Yeah. But I think this is what it comes down to. Like you mentioned, the saving that we made in not going for Johan Garcia and bringing in Kepa instead. I think it's about priorities. I did a pod the other day where we kind of went through the squad and tried to figure out where the gaps are, what the areas are that need addressing. And I came to the conclusion that a striker is number 1 for me. If Thomas Partey leaves, a midfielder is number 2 and a winger is number 3. And I don't know where I would put Morgan Rogers. Like I can't fit him in that category because I don't think he's the type of midfielder that I would feel we need. I don't think he's a specialist winger. And so it's just purely for that reason. It's not that I don't rate the player. And I understand why people want him because he's obviously a talent. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Arsenal go on to do. I don't think the Madueke thing is realistic. I think we've tried to save players before that have seemingly underachieved. And I think the noise around a deal like that would be so loud. I don't know if I'd get near it if I was Arsenal. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, H. I just want to quickly ask you about Rodrigo.
Yep.
Do you think Rodrigo's a realistic signing?
I'd like to think it is. I would. I'd like to think that there's a chance that Arsenal can land him. I think that if the opportunity was to present itself financially, I think Arsenal could find a way.
Yeah.
The only thing is, and I've been saying this consistently throughout the summer on Rodrigo, I feel like it's so player dependent here. I know this has come up again because he didn't play in the Club World Cup the other night and he was dropped. And there's been a lot of discussion about that. There was a feeling that maybe Xabi Alonso coming in was going to see him get back into the kind of zone and have him feeling really good about life at Real Madrid again. That might still be the case, but it's not going away, the Rodrigo chat. The price tag, I think I read last night, 77 million is what people are talking about. Again, I think financially, if there's a will, there's a way. But it's got to be driven by Rodrigo. Rodrigo has to be pushing for it. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. That's how I see it. What about you? How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how realistic is it for you?
I think, I'm similar to you. I think if Rodrigo doesn't really, push for his agents and the club to let him go, I think he'd be happy to try and compete for his place. I think I give it a 6 out of 10. I think just over 5. I think it could happen. I'm actually quietly confident it will, but like you say, I just think, especially Brazilians and South Americans, the top and the pinnacle is Real Madrid, right? So I think for someone who he's only 24, I believe, um, it's going to be hard for him to leave. But I think we could convince him. But not to go back to it, but I think that's why I look at Morgan Rogers. I think you can convince him easy. I think if you can't get Rodrigo, I know people have mentioned Rafa Leao, but I just think Morgan Rogers, Premier League proven. Down the years you see it, man. City have bought players from other Premier League clubs. Liverpool have done it with the likes of Van Dijk, McAllister. I think when you buy within the league, it's just a bit more of a sure bet. So yeah, that's my opinion. If Rodrigo didn't happen, I'd get Rogers, but definitely I'd take Rodrigo over Rogers as of today.
Rodrigo would be the signing that moves the needle. Rodrigo will be the signing that changes things for Arsenal and gives them that bit extra, in my opinion. And if you got Rodrigo in and then you compromised on the striker a little bit, I wouldn't mind so much, because I think
Mm.
either way, like I like Gyökeres, I like Sesko, but do I look at either of them and think they're the difference between Arsenal winning the league and not? Not really.
Do you
Whereas
not?
Rodrigo could be that. No, I don't. I really don't.
Okay.
It's interesting because I know that we need a striker, but I feel like with those two guys, and this might be an unpopular opinion, it's more the profile of the player that everybody's excited about than it is the skills, the skill set. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Gyökeres is scoring goals in the Portuguese league, right? How does that translate to the Premier League? Not sure. How does that 39 goals he got in the Portuguese top flight translate to the Premier League? What will he end up with? 15, 20? Benjamin Sesko got 13 in the Bundesliga. How many can you realistically expect him to get in the Premier League? So for me, it's not so much that I think these guys are real level raisers. It's that I think that both of them are of a profile that we don't have, and you always want what you don't have.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. I think, yeah, like the thought of having a nine who scores goals is the attractive thing rather than the specific players. I know exactly what you mean. I do think Victor Gyökeres, and I'm biased in this, Harry, because I'd want him at the club, so there's bias here. Um, and I watched if people were watching, I don't know if you've seen it, Harry, Sporting Lisbon done like a behind the scenes, a day in the life of Victor Gyökeres. They do it with a few of their players. And just watching it, when you hear players speak, like Victor Gyökeres, for me, it's as much his mentality as his ability why I want him. And similar to like a Rodrigo, he's won all the biggest prizes. You bring him in, he raises the level in terms of mentality. So I think you're right. I think the idea of having a nine is the attractive part as much as the players themselves. But in Gyökeres, man, I think mentally, I think he just brings this. I don't think we've got anyone who has this urge and hunger to score goals. I don't think Saka is like crazy to score. I don't think Havertz is. Gabriel Jesus has admitted himself he's not really a nine. So I think you're right. I think just having someone who is a striker, is a nine in the club is the allure to it. It's not necessarily the players. It's just we need someone who wants to score goals.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said it repeatedly. There's only two strikers out there that we've been linked with that would raise the bar enough for me. And one of them is Alexander Isak, but we're not going to get him. And the other one
Mm.
is Julian Alvarez, but we're not going to get him either.
Big
So
fan
I'm
of him.
kind of
Big fan.
they're both fantastic players. I'm looking at Sesko and I'm thinking could be good, could be an Arsenal hero moving forward. And I'm looking at Gyökeres and I'm thinking the same. But I think again, as you said, because we've wanted a number 9 for such a long time, a really traditional out and out number 9. I'm not even sure that Benjamin Sesko is that, to be honest. He plays in a
Mm.
front two at Leipzig and has dropped deeper and done all that stuff as well. But I think it's the profile and the build of the players that is alluring people in maybe more than how good they are in their level. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. Look, we're going to take another really, really short pause. We've already touched on Kepa. We both think that's really, really good business. We'll bring you up to date with when you can expect to hear more on that one. We'll have a quick chat about Thomas Partey. We're going to talk Alexander Zinchenko as well before we leave you this morning. Be right back.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast live. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. If you're new, we're on our way to the next milestone, so let's get there as soon as possible. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave us a review as well. That stuff really, really does help. So get involved with that. And of course, if you want to check us out on Patreon, you can do that as well. On the Kepa stuff, Romario, looks like he is going to be at London Colney at some point this week, according to The Athletic this morning. So you can expect that deal to be wrapped up pretty soon by the looks of it.
Yeah, I think it's just an easy transfer to get done, isn't it? £5 million. You don't really see many transfers for players of this sort of level happen anymore. So no brainer for me. Good signing. Neto was a bit of a car crash in that it took up one of our Premier League loan spaces. He couldn't play against Bournemouth. And David Raya is so reliable that you don't really need to swap him in and out. So I'm happy with the Kepa signing. I don't know what you think of it, Harry, but yeah, I think it's the sort of smart business you want to see your club doing, really, man.
Yeah, I've said this before, and I'll just quickly sort of reiterate the point. I think that when you are trying to sign a goalkeeper, right, to come in and be second choice, which is essentially what he's going to be, I don't think you need to go and break the bank. I don't think you need to spend crazy amounts of money. Even when we had Aaron Ramsdale at the club, the second choice goalkeeper barely played, and you don't want to be in a situation where, you're stuck, you lose that, because you could lose David Raya at any time. You want to have someone who's competent, but I also don't think it's a position that you should look to invest mega money in. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's needed. And I think this was one area of the team where I was happy for them to just identify a market opportunity. And that's what Kepa is. So he's coming in through the door. Looks like that will be sorted this week. I'd imagine you'll probably get an announcement on that one as well, though, after the 1st of July, because it feels like that's the way these things are heading. On that midfield situation, though, Thomas Partey looks like he's going to leave. There hasn't been any breakthrough in those contract negotiations yet. According to The Athletic this morning, he's entertaining other offers. I don't blame him. He probably looks at it at this stage of his career and thinks, I need a big offer. I need a big contract. I need something that's going to set me up. So I get it. I can understand it. But a player that's been mentioned as a potential alternative is Lucien Agume from Sevilla. I don't know a great deal about him. Did a little bit of research into him the other day. I mean, might well go on to be a very good player, but is he going to come in and be at Thomas Partey's level right away? I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah, I think, I don't know too much about him either, Harry, to be honest with you. I know he's playing for France at the Euro under-21s at the minute. Not sure if they're still in. I know England just beat Spain. But to be honest, Harry, I think it's a smart signing. I think with Zubimendi coming in, I think Mikel Arteta sees him as Partey's replacement. And I think if you bring in Lucien Agume, I think he can be almost like Jorginho, where he deputies to Zubimendi, but you can bed him in slowly but surely. He's only 21. I think if you play him in some cup games in the Champions League, the odd Premier League game here, I think it's a smart signing. I think growing up, you'll know better than me, Arsene Wenger's side always had young players on the cusp, on the verge of the first team. And you saw how much Lewis Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri's emergence lifted the fan base. I know they're homegrown, so it's a little bit different. But even William Saliba, when you've got young players with potential and they grow into it, you feel a bit more connected to them. So I think it's a smart signing. I'm not sure. I don't know if you know, Harry, the fee they're sort of looking at. I think I saw around 30 to 40 million euros, but I think it's a good signing. He played a lot of games for Sevilla last season. He played 35 in the league for Sevilla, so he's clearly got some experience under his belt as well, man.
Yeah, I read a fee of around 20 to 25 million euros, but again, with the reporting, you get so many different stories. It's difficult to know and put your finger on it. Sevilla are in a bad way financially, so you'd look to take advantage of that. They finished 17th in the league last season. They did a Spurs and really struggled. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see if Arsenal move forward with a deal for him. Maybe they're lining that up in the event that they can't come to an agreement with Partey. But from what I've been told, and I don't know if things have changed, this was a few days ago, there's still a willingness on Arsenal's part to convince Thomas Partey to stay. And equally, there's a willingness on Thomas Partey's side of things to remain in London. But obviously, the conditions have to be right. Just before we move on from discussing the midfield, I'm going to take this opportunity very quickly to plug the piece that we put out for Patreons yesterday, which was a scouting video piece on Martin Zubimendi. I'll play you a very short clip from it to give you guys a flavour and a feeling of what we're doing over there. You can sign up via the link in the description if you like, patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. Here's a little clip from our Zubimendi video yesterday.
Certainly enjoys getting stuck into the challenges, which I didn't think was necessarily a characteristic of Martin Zubimendi's game. Now, I appreciate and accept that in La Liga, it's different. This is him against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Look at that again, riding challenges, taking his time and picking out the right pass in the end. That's a lovely win back. Look at that. One sweep out to the left-hand side. He's not just won the ball back there, but he's managed to sweep it out to the left-hand side nice and early. Again, more of these diagonals out to the left-hand side nice and early. Look at that. Takes his time, turns, and then releases just at the right point. Again, taking it in his stride. Brilliantly done. Again, stepping in front of the ball receiver. And that comes from having good anticipation.
You can watch the full video over on patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description to sign up if you wish to support. Let's move on to Zinchenko. Looks like there's some interest in him. AC Milan have been talked about, but I think they've got a problem meeting his wage demands. It's mad that we live in a world where Fulham are willing to pay a player more money than AC Milan, but that's the way football's gone, and the way the Premier League's gone. First of all, would you be sad to see him go, Zinchenko? Do you still think he's got a use at Arsenal?
You know what, Harry, man? I'd love to say yes, because I sort of like Zinchenko. He's got one of them characters and personalities that's quite good around the dressing room. I think on the same side of that, he's maybe too jovial, a bit too happy, go lucky, always joking. But I think it's the right time. I think one thing we get wrong at Arsenal is the time we sell players. And I think it reflects here. I think Fulham are looking at a fee around £10 million. I read that Arsenal values Zinchenko at £12.5 million, which to me, Harry, is just bonkers. Like I can't quite understand how he's only worth that much. I think 20 million, 30 million is more reasonable. But obviously he's just spent a season not really playing for the club. I don't think he started many games in the league. So I think that's where we go wrong, man. We sort of kill the value of our players. So I'll be sad to see him leave in terms of a character, but I think it's the right time for him to go, man.
Yeah, I think it's the right time for him to go as well. But I mean, the point about his value, I think we get into this world, right, where we value a player at what we think they're worth, but actually they're only worth what someone's willing to pay. If you put a house up for sale for £1 million, but no one's willing to pay more than 250,000, it's not worth £1 million, is it? It's your own valuation that isn't always accurate and in line with everything else. So look, if we got 15, I'd be okay with that. I think with Zinchenko, there would be a big saving on his salary as well, which I think is probably how the club look at it. I always say this, I don't think the club view transfer fees as the be all and end all. I think a big business like Arsenal can generate money and can find the funds to put down on transfer fees. The problem is the ongoing costs. That's what they struggle with, and that's what they're wary of getting out of control. So I think if you save his salary and you get 15 million quid in for him, that would be great. I think with Zinchenko, though, he's had a rough ride recently in terms of like his reputation has taken a bit of a hit. You know, he's not the greatest defender, we all know that, but he's a really good technical footballer, very creative when he plays in that left back position and drifts into midfield. And in a lot of ways, he's paved the way for Lewis Skelly to come in and now do that and hopefully take it to another level. He's the example of what an inverted fullback should be in terms of the way he executed that role. And people have got short memories, I think. When you look at where we were prior to that season, where him and Jesus came in, we were miles off of it. miles off of it. And those two guys come in and just instantly raised the level, not by themselves, but they played a big part. And Arsenal became title challengers straight away. So I think sometimes we underplay how important Zinchenko's arrival at Arsenal was, but that doesn't mean he's the solution and the answer for us now. So it's probably the right time for us and for him to move on. And if he goes to Fulham, I mean, for him, doesn't have to leave London, doesn't have to uproot his family, doesn't have to change much in terms of, you know, where he's based and located. And he's probably going to get a better salary than he would get at most continental clubs, because the Premier League is a financial beast at the moment. And you know, did you see that interview with Alex Iwobi, by the way, the other day, where they asked him, why do you like signing Arsenal players so much? And he said, we might sign another one. And then the next day you hear Zinchenko linked with Fulham. So who knows? Who knows? We'll see.
I was going to say, Harry, they're becoming a bit of a feeder club. They've obviously had Iwobi, Leno, Smith Rowe. So yeah, from a human point of view, you get it why it makes sense, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. And when you think about it as well, Fulham had a decent season last year, 11th. They were never really in any danger of getting sucked into the drop zone or anything like that. So it's obviously working for them. So maybe they'll continue buying our cast-offs, if you like. But anyway, Romario, I'm going to leave it there, mate. Thank you so much for joining me, man. Let people know what you're up to, how they can subscribe to your channel as well. The link is in the description. So let them know what you got coming up.
Oh, thank you, bro, for having me on. Loved it. Big up everyone who's watching and in the comments. I'm actually a viewer of the pod, so it's nice to be on the other side. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Romario Webster. That's what I am on all the platforms. Yeah, just started my YouTube, so please subscribe, watch some of my videos. I've just done a video on why Liverpool have to win the league. No excuses. Yeah, come over
Brilliant stuff. Make sure you go over and check out the channel. The link is in the description. As I said already, don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe as well if you haven't done so already. Listen to us on Spotify. If you prefer, and our patrons out, the patrons, the link is in the description as well. We'll be back very soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. Stay best.